Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We might traditionally think of the final preseason game as kind of meaningless, but with one fewer preseason game this year and a lot still at stake for the Chicago Bears, there is plenty to watch for against the Tennessee Titans on Saturday night. This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm an analyst for Pro Football Focus, and I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook, join the Locked On Bears Facebook group, and make sure that you subscribe to the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. On the show today, what to watch for in the Bears preseason finale against the Tennessee Titans. We'll start with the starting quarterback, Justin Fields, really getting a chance to take the full reins from the very first snap. We'll look at what we need to see from him on the field and why it's not so much about the big throws or the big scrambles he makes out of the pocket. Then we'll turn our attention to this Bears offensive line, where we should see the more or less full strength starting lineup all playing together for the first time for Justin Fields. We'll hone in particularly on some of the different dynamics at play with left tackle Jason Peters, trying to get him ready for the regular season at age 39. And then we wrap up with the conclusion of this cornerback competition. Should see some of the key players all playing throughout this game and how we can sort of indicate who might be moving ahead of others and even moving into the slot and some of the bottom of the depth chart spots at cornerback. A lot up for grabs against these Tennessee Titans. All that and plenty more on today's Locked On Bears podcast. But let's start with Justin Fields, because as I think back to the game against the Buffalo Bills this past week, that big hit was really the reminder that he still has quite a bit, not quite a bit, but still has more to learn, right? A reminder that he's not perfect. No player truly is, but the reminder that he is still a rookie and there are still going to be mistakes along the way. There's still room for improvement there, and that's part of one of the few things that separates Andy Dalton from Justin Fields in that particular field. You could still probably make a stronger argument that Fields is more talented and maybe gives the Bears still a better chance to win week one than Dalton, but regardless, still an area for Justin Fields to need to get better. I mean, as much as it's fun to see, the big runs that spark this offense or some of the nice downfield throws, those all remind us of the talent that Justin Fields has. But that's not what this last game is really about for me. We don't really need to see Justin Fields throw for 4 touchdowns and a couple hundred yards or whatever, right? I mean, it would be fun. It'd be cool. We're rooting for it, absolutely. But I don't really necessarily fully care what his completion percentage is in this game. If he misses some throws here and there, I'm not going to be worried that Justin Fields is somehow a bad quarterback now, right? He's not. I don't need him to prove talent at this stage of the preseason. I really want to see like clean game management. It's not like game manager quarterbacking per se, but like doing all the different things you need to as a leader, as the sort of offensive signal caller on the field. That's getting the protections correct, making sure that you're not allowing a free rusher off the edge to come give you a pretty big lick. Even though Fields claimed it didn't really hurt that much, the helmet scraped across his face, but the hit itself didn't really hurt all that much. Sure, we'll believe him and give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. It was his body; he took the hit. It's no reason for him to just kind of tough it out or pretend like it was different. But blitz pickup, for example, and knowing when a defense, albeit very vanilla in the preseason, will show you a certain look, and being able to adjust at the line of scrimmage and know when and where to pick your battles. Like on the play against the Bills, he was hit. He had adjusted for like a double move for Riley Ridley on the outside, and maybe knowing that might not have been the situation, or that the front that he was facing maybe wasn't putting him in the right spot to have the time to wait for that double move, right? He has the knowledge to make those type of adjustments. It's just knowing when to make which adjustments and at what points those are going to be appropriate. But it comes down to a lot of sort of the pre-snap reads and pre-snap adjustments. And it's kind of hard for us to really pick it up, especially live watching from home. There's so many different things going on the field that we can't from our television angles always see exactly how well their things are going, unless it's a big unblocked hit off the edge that makes it very clear and obvious. But for me, it's sort of about timing at times with the receiver and just maybe getting rid of the ball a little bit more quickly, a little bit more decisively. There have been a couple of plays where maybe he looks someplace and then, holds it, but almost winds up for the pump fake, but ends up deferring elsewhere. You want to see smart decision making, and maybe holding onto the ball in a lot of those situations has been the smart decision. But we saw sort of some contrast with Mitch Trubisky's quick passing and getting rid of the ball to open receivers underneath and having some success with that Bills offense moving. And those are the type of little things I might want to see Fields do, especially with questions about this offensive line, just trying to get through plays quicker and not necessarily relying on them to block very long or having to rely on your legs to extend those plays and really see things get open. I also want to see how Justin Fields gets this offense into a rhythm, and particularly a couple things, how long it takes, first and foremost, because we've seen the Bears starting offense with Dalton really come out kind of slow and not get into that rhythm. But for Fields, at what point does that pick up? When he's come in the game, it hasn't always been instant offense. It's taken maybe a drive or two, and then there's a big play that really sparks the energy in the offense with Fields in the game, but it hasn't been right away. So if he's the starter in this game and might play the full first half, is it going to take a full quarter before he's ready to go? Is it just a drive or two, or can he come out on the first drive and look dialed in and start lighting things up early on? Those are the kind of little things I'm looking for. And then if there's some kind of adversity along the way, a turnover, a missed throw here, or a batted pass, or a tipped ball that's picked off, can he bounce back from that? Can he rekindle that momentum once he gets it rolling, or does it take a little while to build back up to it, right? It's like I said, it's not really necessarily about like the completion percentage per se, or the number of touchdowns or the number of yards, but sort of game flow and situational football, how he's handling it as this Bears quarterback, especially when you get into like certain downs and distances. And we've seen a little bits of this here and there, but third and short, third and medium, is he getting the ball past the sticks? Is he just being forced to dump it off? 2-minute offense, different things like that we haven't really seen a lot of Fields being tested in some of those ways. I think for me, he just needs to leave no doubt that he's ready to be a regular season starting quarterback. And then it's his job to just kind of wait for Dalton to create that doubt in him as that starting quarterback. I think the bigger question for me in this game is whether or not the Bears offensive line and even the receivers to some extent can really let Justin Fields be Justin Fields. But we'll dive into particularly these offensive line starters and how the Bears are handling the veteran Jason Peters next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears brought to you by our friends at BuiltBar.com, the makers of the world's best tasting protein bar. I've tried a lot of protein bars in my day, and I haven't found anything besides Built Bar that has this combination of nutrients and delicious taste. Because every Built Bar is covered in 100% real chocolate. They're soft, they're easy to chew. For me, they taste a lot like candy bars, but they're all low sugar, low calories, high fiber, and high protein. And I just can't find anything else that's this low on sugar and calories and this high on protein. It's exactly what I'm looking for in a protein bar, but then it also tastes good too, and it comes in a bunch of really delicious flavors. I love the cookies and cream, salted caramel, coconut, strawberry, and so many others. I guarantee you will find something you like. Just order one of the mixed boxes. You get to try all the flavors. You can't go wrong. Trust me, they're all good. Head on over to BuiltBar.com and enter our promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Through the first 2 preseason games, no quarterback in the NFL, at least no quarterback that has played enough snaps to qualify, has been under pressure more than Justin Fields. Not like philosophical pressure, but like number of passing plays where a pass rusher moves Justin Fields off of his spot. He has had the highest percentage of his passing plays facing pressure from opposing pass rushers this preseason. And he's done a very good job in spite of all that pressure, but maybe it's not the most advantageous situation and environment for a rookie quarterback to be successful. But there's kind of a double-edged sword here because Fields is also the quarterback that is averaging the longest time to throw. Essentially, he is holding on to the ball longer on average per play than every other quarterback in the preseason. I think some of that is skewed by just how well he's able to extend plays with his legs. And it's a question of, should he be throwing the ball away or just trying to get rid of it quicker? Or do you want him extending some of those plays? And I think for Fields, the longer time to throw is advantageous as opposed to showing indecision or a lack of decisiveness or missing reads or things like or being too slow in his reads, because it's not as though he's getting sacked after holding on to it for 5 seconds. He is able to either get past the line of scrimmage, throw it away, or sometimes find an open receiver downfield. And I think it generally has worked out well for the Bears. But I think some of it too can be on receivers not creating as much separation or getting open when you're playing with a lot of backups. I mean, some of it I think is the offensive line struggles. Some of it, Fields is just looking for the bigger player and wanting to be a playmaker that sometimes he could take advantage of, just take what the defense gives you, take the check down and move on to the next play. But we'll get finally about as close to a full strength Bears offensive line as we've seen all preseason in this game. I think it's supposed to be the week 1 starting lineup: Jason Peters, Cody Whitehair, Sam Mustipher, James Daniels, Jermaine Ifedi from left to right. And right now, the key guy is Jason Peters. He's age 39, late coming as a free agent after right before Tevin Jenkins officially had back surgery and was ruled out for some time. And the Bears are kind of trying to handle this and monitor it very closely. But I was a little bit surprised that when Matt Nagy was asked about how they're handling Peters, he didn't sound as positive and cheery about week 1 as maybe you would have thought.
With Peters on Saturday, if all systems are go after what you see Saturday, will he still be in shape to go an entire regular season NFL game in week 1? Or are you trying to determine that by what he does?
Yeah, we're not going to determine it by Saturday. We're going to see where he's at to give us a gauge to where he's at, so that the rest of the time as we go preparing for the Rams, those whatever it is, 17, 16 days, that's where he's going to have to continue every day to work on his conditioning and game shape. So we'll get a good feel of what he feels like when he's out there and how that goes. And we're going to rely on him. He's a guy that's played a lot of games, and he can tell us, okay, percent-wise, this is where I'm at. And then we just got to be prepared heading into that game where he's at and how much he can go or not go.
So as unorthodox as it might be, could that be a rotation situation in a regular season game, or do you want one or the other,
Well, you would love to have one or the other, but we're prepared if it is rotational. We have to be prepared for that.
The idea of going with the rotational left tackle in the regular season sounds very far from ideal for me. It's just, especially if it's going to be either Elijah Wilkinson or the rookie 5th round pick Larry Borum. Neither one has really looked like a natural, true NFL left tackle at this point in the preseason. But I don't fully understand the dynamics here with Peter in the sense that they signed Jason Peters on August 16th. And the game against the Los Angeles Rams is September 12th. That's almost a full month he'll have been in the Bears organization. He hasn't been fully practicing for that full month, but if he can't get into game shape, or at least close enough to play, right? I mean, maybe it'll take a game or two to really be used to regular season speed. It takes everybody a little while to knock a little bit of the regular season rust off, but enough to at least last out there, right? If it takes more than a month, what are we doing? Like if he can't get in shape, was kind of the phrasing that Nagy was using. I mean, conditioning, yes, but like if conditioning is that big of a concern that it takes a month and he's still not quite ready, what confidence and hope should we have that he can stay healthy and active for a full regular season then? I mean, what level of physical tools? He says he feels 100% and that his teammates think he's 100%. So then why is there this question of whether or not he's going to be able to hold up, right? And we're sort of hearing two different sides when it comes to Peters, and it's definitely a concern for me moving forward. I'm curious to see how long this starting offensive line plays against the Titans, and then if they take him out, well, Justin Fields is still in there, presumably. How will Fields handle that when they go to backups? Will the offense drop off? Will the protection get significantly worse? And then will Fields get worse? And will the momentum drop, or will they stop scoring? Or, how will that change, potentially impact the game flow of this Titans game? Or can the backup offensive line start to hold up a little bit better? Are they going to start seeing a little bit more of that progress there? It'll be interesting to see, but I'm glad to see that we'll get some starting offensive line for Justin Fields to show what he can do. The O-line won't be the only starters we'll see against the Tennessee Titans. We'll go through this cornerback group in particular and really coming down to the end of this starting cornerback battle next on Locked On Bears. It's that time of year again with the regular season right around the corner. All eyes are on football, and BetOnline.ag is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including online's largest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's biggest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, open now at BetOnline.ag. Don't forget to take advantage of their opening day super promo as well. If you make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys, if your bet loses, BetOnline.ag will refund your wager up to $25 if you sign up and enter the promo code NFL100. That NFL100 promo code also gets you a 100% welcome bonus match on your first deposit. So not only is it a bet you cannot lose, but double your money to play and win big at betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. I'm not expecting to see any established veterans on either side of the ball against the Tennessee Titans, but these cornerback spot is still up for grabs. I'm not sure how much we'll see Jalen Johnson. He's young, but he's very clearly locked into the starting lineup, so that'll be interesting. But we talked on yesterday's podcast about how Desmond Trufant has been absent for the last couple of weeks with personal reasons. It's a very sad situation. It sounds like it's a death in the family that obviously will keep him away from the team and needs time, and totally understandable and a horrible thing. And we offer his family condolences, and certainly the Bears are trying to handle it as best as they can. But that leaves this cornerback competition for the starting spot really down to Kindle Vildor and the former Steelers first-round pick, Artie Burns. And this third preseason game is really, I think, the last opportunity for those two guys to duke it out. I imagine how they've performed at practices will go a long way in how the Bears are making this decision. But, I mean, as of the last preseason game, they were seemingly neck and neck. And I think when you go into this third preseason game, playing time will tell you a lot. That if Vildor's out there early and then comes out early and Burns plays most of the game, maybe it tells you Vildor's kind of their guy, unless Burns really just turned it on and had a big multi-interception game or some kind of showing them something more that they hadn't seen from him up to this point in the preseason. Because even when you look back against the Buffalo Bills in particular, the Vildor and Burns played pretty much the same. I mean, exactly the same number of snaps on defense. And I don't know if that was perfectly intentional to make sure they both get 33 or whatever, but obviously they wanted to at least keep them close and ended up hitting it right on the head for both of them to really show what they can do. But I mean, Kindle Vildor's got to still be the favorite, right? I mean, he was one of the early offseason standouts in OTAs and really sort of rode that into training camp. I know when you think back to that Bills performance in particular, it stands out in our minds, remembering Trubisky throwing at Vildor a lot and, allowed a handful of completions. But I also remember, and you can go back on tape and see Vildor very physical, not only in coming up and making the tackle after the catch, but getting involved in the running game and certainly gang tackling when the ball's not thrown at Vildor, but in his area. He's got the energy, the motor, the hustle to come up and deliver some of those hits and be physical and, not be afraid. Like some cornerbacks don't like the contact so much, but Vildor has absolutely been in there. And that's not to say that Artie Burns hasn't either, but it stood out for me a little bit more with Vildor. And I don't get too caught up on targets and completions and coverage in preseason games because the Bears defense isn't really scheming and game planning. They're not trying to show anything they can to give away anything for the regular season. So it's not really showing each player in the best position possible for them to be successful. So there's some give and take there. And that's why practice is so important when it comes to trying to figure out who's going to win these competitions. And we just don't have that level of access to, to see all the practice tape from everything that Matt Nagy and this coaching staff is going through for these guys. But I also don't know that the slot cornerback position battle is quite over just yet either. We've been kind of assuming it's going to be Duke Shelley. He kind of filled in that role last year after Buster Screen was hurt. But through these 2 preseason games, we've seen a lot of Marquis Christian playing a lot in the slot, and he's got versatility. I mean, he came to the Bears kind of as a safety, and he's played some safety when he's not in the slot. They've used him in both opportunities, and really think there's a value there that Duke Shelley can play some inside and some outside cornerback, so he has some versatility too. But you wonder if you could get creative with Christian and maybe roll him to safety and Eddie Jackson down to the slot sometimes and use him almost like a 3 safety package, but just being able to trust him as a slot cornerback as well could open up some of the creativity for Sean Desai if Christian was the one in the lineup as opposed to Duke Shelley. And Christian's been playing a lot of special teams and playing pretty well in special teams in these preseason. A couple of big tackles. I think the combination of special teams and versatility, I'm penciling in Marquis Christian somewhere on my 53-man roster. It's just a question of is he backup safety, starting slot cornerback, hybrid defensive backup / special teams ace. We'll see exactly how they want to fit all the pieces together. But I think Marquis Christian is a name that we definitely need to keep an eye on here moving forward. It's worth also keeping an eye on Thomas Graham, the rookie. For me, he's probably a borderline 53-man roster player. Made that nice diving pass breakup last week against the Bills, got up and started running it back like it was an interception. They ended up blowing it dead and bringing him back, but impressive playmaking and certainly an energy and a hustle there. He is a rookie draft pick, so there's some incentive to keep him, but he hasn't shown enough. He's late enough round pick that they could stash him on the practice squad, could stick him on the 53-man roster. He's another one that I'm keeping out. Just if he can have another big game this preseason game, it would go a long way to really confirming that roster spot for him. A couple others too. Rodney Adams, the wide receiver. We talked about him on yesterday's podcast. After Javon Wims was cut, that's encouraging for Adams. To definitely increases his chances to make the 53-man roster. Still think Riley Ridley probably more likely at this point. Maybe Daz Newsome as well, but we'll see. And again, preseason game can go a long way towards shaping those type of decisions. Same with Khalil Herbert, the rookie running back. Very heavy on the special teams throughout this preseason so far. Like to see him get some more runs, and if he can show a little more on offense, as Damian Williams has struggled, great opportunity for him there. And the tight end, Jesper Horsted, been playing a lot of special teams in the preseason. And if the Bears keep 4 tight ends again, I feel like we've seen more from Horsted than we've seen from JP Holtz. Holtz has long been a consistent special teams guy, some fullback versatility there, but Horsted has higher upside on offense. So again, maybe he makes a few catches in this preseason game and reminds the Bears coaching staff that, hey, I might be able to make a difference here, but clearly behind Jesse James, this would be tight end 4 at the absolute best case scenario for him. So still a lot at stake in this 3rd preseason game. A lot of players worth watching. I know I will be tuned in for more than just Justin Fields. I know you will too, because you are a diehard Chicago Bears fan following along the Locked On Bears podcast. We'll break it all down for you on Monday and get all set for this 53-man roster before we really turn our attention to the Los Angeles Rams, the regular season just around the corner. So make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, it's free and available on all platforms. That's the best way to make sure you keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. It's been fun getting ready for this regular season. I'm excited for the games to pretty soon start counting more and more, and pretty soon maybe get to Justin Fields as a regular season starter. For now, we'll enjoy Justin Fields as a preseason starter. And I think all things considered, even though it's not a game that counts towards the win-loss record, just being able to get the full Justin Fields experience to begin a game should make it a little bit easier to bear down.